So thank you for joining. I'm Florian Pouchet, yes, from Hudson in New York, actually, as you can see on this slide. So after lunch, I hope it will be not too hard to speak about a bit of regulation. Might not be the funniest topic for the first session of the afternoon, but anyway. So let's speak about data privacy with the GDPR, so General Data Privacy Regulation. So to start with, why me? But actually, I'm part of a more global consultancy that is a major player in Europe and also implementing actually all kind of cybersecurity to related to data privacy regulations. So basically, even though Hudson in New York might sound like a law firm company name, I'm not legal at all. And basically why I'm here is because we can help on getting things done practically. And I'd like to go through the regulation today by helping you see that from a more practical point of view on what actually General Data Protection Regulation means and how could you implement that practically on your business. So to start with, General Data Protection Regulation. How many of you do know that regulation already? So please raise your hand. Okay, a couple of persons. And among those, how many of you do know the implications of the regulation itself? So what it means and, okay, three people. Okay, I bet this will be useful then. So in case you wonder, and you might have noticed already from my accent, I'm French, just relocated in the UK, and considering the context, might be quite interesting to speak about a European regulation, actually. So, General Data Protection Regulation, it's quite the holy grail of the data protection regulation, coming for an update of the 1985 directive from Europe that was quite not fit for purpose anymore, considering the new trends around digital transformation, the need to share and publish and use more data in big data projects, in open data projects, and every usage of data that you can think of. So that's why they started to think about a new way to protect the data of consumers or citizens. So that's when, in 2012, it started around the General Data Protection Regulation. After a long discussion with all parties in European Commission, the Parliament, Council of Europe, they ended up approving this regulation a few months ago, so in 2016, and gave us 2 years to implement that, and it comes into force in 2018. So, okay, a few weeks ago, we had quite an event related to EU. So how much does that relate to the General Data Protection Regulation, that is an EU regulation? Actually, the Data Protection Regulation regards all EU member states, as we are still now, for now, at least, and all personal data for EU citizens. So basically, if you have a subsidiary in Europe, or if you have clients in Europe, you have to apply, at least on that scope, on that kind of data, the General Data Protection Regulation. Which means, in the short term, actually, we should focus on implementing that law. And the second thing is, as you might have seen in the news, in all the question around the right to be forgotten, around Google and all the GAFAs, the question of data privacy is all the more present in the news and in the discussions. So even though in the coming years, maybe the UK will not be part of Europe anymore, it's quite likely that the UK will still have one of its own, if not the General Data Protection Regulation, that would have similar implications, so similar things to be implemented. So call it whatever you like. In essence, it's a good opportunity to rely and get a grasp on the real content of the regulation and what it actually means and why this regulation has been built and why you have things to do according to the regulation. So let's dive into it a little bit. First consequences, first implications is actually so one-stop shop dimension to have one single point of contact in case you have data privacy question in your country. It might already is the case with the local data protection authority with the ICO in the UK. But it's generalized all through Europe to have one single point of contact for each country. The second thing and major topic is the fine level. So the General Data Protection Regulation brings the fines to a brand new level. So previously, with the Data Protection Act, you could imagine fines up to 100,000 euros, 200,000 euros or such, which was not made anyway for now. And with the Data Protection Regulation, the new one, you will be able to, actually, you might be fined up to 20 million euros or 4% of your global turnover, which means even though you're not located in Europe, headquartered in Europe, you might still have a fine that is taken based on your global turnover. So that might mean a lot, a very big amount. So it's quite an incentive to think about it and think, okay, what should we do about that? The last point on the data protection officer means that you will need to have a properly identified data protection officer, which I hope you already have in your organization, abiding by the Data Protection Act in the UK. But if not, it's a good place to start. Okay. In numbers, so it's quite a big piece of regulation, more than 200 pages and more than 80, 90 articles, actually. I guess you don't want to read that yourself. So fortunately, I wrote you the major implications in that presentation that are in the number of 4. Privacy by design, accountability, data breach notification, and not that new one, the right to erasure that already exists in the current Data Protection Act, but is quite strengthened in the new regulation. So bear with me as we go through these 4 dimensions and understand a bit more what it means and how could you practically implement that in your organization. So first one, let's take accountability. So basically, accountability means that as of the enforcement of the data protection regulation, you will need to be able to demonstrate that you are in compliance with the law. Previously, with the Data Protection Act and other data protection regulations across Europe, was mainly on a declaration basis, on your good faith, that you say, okay, I do good things with the data, I protect the data of my employees, of my customers, of my whatever data, personal data you are using in your business. So now you should demonstrate that you are compliant with the law. Which means that you will basically need to document your processes, document the data you use, the treatments, the process that are related to it, for what use you manipulate the data, what treatments do you execute, and be able to publish that, to provide that quite easily for your data subjects, so the people that are concerned with this data. They should know what you do with your data. Exactly like the articles you might find on the website saying that your personal data might be used for any other kind of advertising or other things, as soon as you click that checkbox that you have to click anyway. So that's the first thing. You have to trace that data processing, so you have to be able to know exactly where data comes from, where it goes, and what happened in the meantime, in between, what changes, what updates on the data. And should these need to be mentioned, you have to cooperate with the authorities. So basically, if the ICO wants to audit you, you have to let them in. It's better as we say it. Okay, privacy by design, second dimension. It's the big core thing of the General Data Protection Regulation. The thing is to be able to implement the data privacy principles as soon as possible in every project. You might do this already for security, for data protection, encryptions, and availability of your services. You will have to do that as well for your data protection, for your privacy. Basically, you will have to change the way your project management office operates and governs your projects to include, at the beginning of the projects, what is called the privacy impact assessments. That is basically a risk assessment on the data privacy question. So what would be the impact should your data be leaked to the public? So the personal data you're processing in your project. So this will involve your PMO office and obviously, most probably, the CISO and security teams, as they are already taking some measures around data protections related to cybersecurity. Next two implications, data breach notification. So very big one. Actually, this one takes out the question of data protection only from the IT perspective to also the public knowledge, so crisis management. You will have to be able to notify first the authority, the data protection authority, that is the ICO, about any breaches that you might have in your data protected information system. And then to assess, along with the authority, should you notify also the data subject, which means your clients, which means your employees, or which means the person in question related to the data breach, the data that has breached. And actually, you might imagine the cost of such a notification if you have to inform all your clients that, oh, oops, my client's database has been leaked and all your information regarding your bank account numbers, your address, your names of your key person are now publicly available on the internet. The cost of the notification and the impact after that on your reputation and your business overall. Last point, right to erasure. So not that a new one, actually, as you know, that you already are able to ask for your data to be removed from systems, even that is maybe not well advertised in the website. The question is, here you will have to be able to do this, so which means you will have to know where the data is, which is already a first good question to your IT department, probably. And you will have to be able to process a request from the data subject, a customer, a client, or whatever employee that requests his data to be removed. Two things about that. The first thing is, before you have request, you also will have to implement good balance of conservation period for your data, which means you will not be able to keep your data for a long time if you do not need it anymore, at least in an active way, in production systems. You might still get it in archives, should need be, for your overall legal purpose. So that's starting point, defining the good conservation period for your data, and then be able to process the request for data subject to remove the data from your systems. So these are, I would say, one practical way to implement that is not to inform and raise awareness around all your customer relationship teams, because it might bring a lot of people in that topic and might not be that well trained and not being able to get this information actually to the system that needs to be acted upon. So we recommend to focus that action on the DPO himself, the data protection officer, the person responsible, to be the person that will get the request from the customers. We don't expect to have that much a year anyway, and be able to enforce that and apply that in the systems. Overall, we are in 2016. We have a bit less than 2 years up to May 2018 to enforce that regulation, which means we should start doing things right now. what we recommend for that, to start with, actually this year, do a risk mapping, a risk analysis of your 10 most critical data privacy risks. So what are the 10 most sensitive personal data that might leak and that might damage your reputation, your business, or whatever. And yeah, focus on that 10 first. Then next year, implement the 4 dimensions we described previously in the presentation. To be able to comply, obviously you have dimensions like notifications that are transversal and applicable for every risk that you will want to cover. And in 2018, test what you implemented. So actually do a crisis simulation exercise to test if all your processes, organization, and all the way it should function is actually functioning. And actually, if I could provide you one takeaway from this session, would be you could even start with a data privacy crisis simulation to gain momentum and sponsorship from your C-level executive, like, well, actually the CIO, like the head of communication or sales or customer relationship. Bring all that people in the same room and ask them the simple question, okay, let's imagine your customer database has been leaked and is on the internet now. What should you do now? And let them try to find a solution. If they are not trained, if they are not prepared that, there's a great chance they will want to know more on how we could help and prepare moving forward for that regulation. Thank you for your time. And I'll be around if you have any questions. Don't hesitate to catch me. Thank you.